from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. Looking forward to chatting with you guys. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And, of course, lots going on in the world tonight. But the main thing that's happening, and it's happening right now, is the vice presidential debate right here in New York City. In a building I used to work in, believe it or not, CBS Broadcast Center over there on 57th Street. So we're going to go to the debate before we chop it up, and I give you some of the highlights that I've heard thus far. So far, just to give you the play-by-play, I've been watching it since the inception, and I can tell you J.D. Vance, cool, calm, very collected. Tim Walz getting a little bit flustered every now and again, getting called out on fact checks by J.D. Vance. Of course, the moderators, Norah O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan have not been quite a 3-on-1, but they've attempted it a couple of times. J.D. Vance not taking the bait, holding his own. We're going to take this live to Tim Walz saying something silly. Let's check it out.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens? If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill, one of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it, if a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods, too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, yeah. Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But, Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for a national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in
Well, of course, that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local. Many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen.
All right, folks, you're listening to the debate live on ABC News, CBS News, excuse me. I said ABC News before, CBS News. And we're watching, of course, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota go at it with Senator J.D. Vance. Tim Walz repeatedly lying and not getting fact-checked. J.D. Vance telling the truth and getting fact-checked, saying that immigration is a key driver of the housing crisis in our country, all these new people, where they're going to live. And, of course, the moderators at CBS News saying, well, how can you prove that? Where's that coming from? I thought that was common sense. Anyway, we're going to come right back to this. The debate is live. It's in progress. We're carrying it for you right here with me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez. We're live with you till 1 a.m. We're going to have some amazing debate analysis from a former debate writer who's going to be joining us in a little bit. Former Trump campaign communications director also joining us in a little bit. And right now I want to go back to the seeming 3-on-1 between Margaret Brennan, Nora O'Donnell, and Tim Walz, all versus J.D. Vance, and he's smiling and taking them all on and winning, in my opinion. Let's go back to the debate.
You're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher. And he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then what happens is— So you
think the individual mandate's a good idea?
You shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret.
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss.
We're out of time.
Margaret.
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota, and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some places, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of child care model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with child care. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide child care in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote child care because, look, it is unacceptable. And, you know, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on child care as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, child care options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the child care shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear.
And that is Governor Tim Walz giving another non-answer. We're up against the clock right here. We're coming right back, carrying the closing comments of the debate. Folks, again, Rich Valdez with you live till 1 a.m. We're carrying this stuff live from New York, the vice presidential debate right here on America at Night, analysis and more, plus your calls coming up next. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And we continue with our coverage of the debate, the vice presidential debate between Governor Tim Walz and Senator J.D. Vance. Each of the candidates right now is talking about their endorsements, their plans for the future, and more. We're going to catch this live in progress.
He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day, some with the American flag. Several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement, but this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the
masks.
governor does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah, well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this, I'm pretty shocked by this, he lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So, America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate continues.
All right. And there you have it. You have Governor Walz going and into channeling his inner Don Rickles and pitting the debate between him and democracy and J.D. Vance and honoring Trump. Is it enough to sway the American people? It wasn't enough to sway me, I could tell you that. I think J.D. Vance has been mopping the floor with Governor Walz all night long. We've got clips of that. We're going to bring it to you if you're just joining us in progress. And we're going to take a pause right here, coming right back for the finale of this thing. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I'm so glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez. We're covering the vice presidential debate at I keep saying ABC News, CBS Broadcast Center. That's 57th Street in Manhattan. And you've got Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, Kamala Harris's running mate, and U.S. Senator J.D. Vance, Trump's running mate, going at it, and they're doing their final closing remarks. Let's join the debate in progress.
CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country, and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something. Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that, all the while asking everyone Join this movement. Make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that, too, has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Norah O'Donnell. And a reminder that.
All right, so there you have it. All three opponents of Senator Vance, Margaret Brennan, Norah O'Donnell, and Governor Tim Walz signing off from the CBS debate tonight. Senator Vance holding his own, I think, head and shoulders above everyone else. Knockout punch after knockout punch, in my opinion. Really, I don't think Walz even laid a glove on him. Now, I can tell you, I did a little experiment tonight, and the experiment was I wanted to get I'm going to say, somewhat unbiased perspective from someone who's not a political observer. So as I was watching the debate from its inception, I asked my 19-year-old daughter to come into the room with me and watch it with me. And she, she gave lots of very interesting takeaways. She had a lot of opinions on a lot of different things. And one of the takeaways she had was she said, okay, so she points at Vance and she says, he's giving vice president. She pointed to Walz and said, he's giving Joe Biden. And I thought, that's great, right from the mouths of babes. So I think that was it. By the way, a little play-by-play here. The candidates are now shaking hands with their handlers and their wives, their handlers, I guess the same, coming over and greeting them on the stage. And I'm gonna say, I think a lot of people are going to be really pleased with this debate. While it was contentious, it is a debate. These guys seem to be getting along well. They seem to be respectful towards one another. And I think a lot of people have been missing that level of civility in American politics. I can tell you, kind of like the days of the Roman Empire, I like the blood sport. I really do. I enjoy it. I love that. It's probably why I love Trump like I do, because he goes for the jugular in most cases. And I think it's what was missing from American politics, where we glorified bipartisanship and failed to really provide contrast. And I guess you can call me a radical, if you will. I don't mind that moniker, but I think sometimes you have to be radical to bring about the change we need. And if we're going to see a deficit that actually changes, if we're going to see spending that actually stops or at least decreases, if we're going to see the type of change this country really needs, it's going to require radical change. So anyway, we'll continue on what was going on, the funny moments, like some of the misspeakings of Governor Walz saying, I became friends with school shooters. I think he said it twice, which was kind of weird. And the fact check where they turned off J.D. Vance's microphone and he was as gracious a gentleman as one could ask for. We'll get to all of that straight ahead. Plus, we've got former Trump campaign communications director Tim Murtaugh is scheduled to be with us at the top of the hour, followed by former Fox News debate writer, producer Jenn Kerns, who's also a radio host and an author. She's terrific, and she's going to be joining us as well to give us some of the play-by-play and her analysis as well. And we've got a live report coming out of the field from a relief group that's on the ground working with FEMA in the ravaged areas that have been left behind by Hurricane Helene. So all of that is coming up, plus your calls and more in the third hour. Open phones across America. So just sit back, relax, enjoy the program. We're just kicking it off with our analysis now that the debate is wrapped up. Don't go anywhere. Rich Valdez coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important
we're
because
going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
And again, despite the 3-on-1 between Margaret Brennan and Norah O'Donnell and Governor Tim Walz, J.D. Vance, again, head and shoulders above all of them, the winner of tonight's debate. That's how I land on this. I don't know where you guys are at. Let's see. What do we got here? I'm logging into my call screen to see if we have somebody that wants to make an opinion here. Let us go to David, one of our favorite liberals calling from San Francisco, California. Quickly, go right ahead.
Well, thanks, Rich. And course of correction, I'm a conservative, 1776 conservative, and I don't like to see my money sucked out of the country by big corporations. But regarding Trump and the debate tonight, or Vance and the debate tonight, Donald Trump has not donated money to aid efforts in the Carolinas right now.
I don't think anybody said he donated money. Has anybody said he's donated money?
I know. No, they haven't, because he hasn't.
Now, why are you saying
he
it?
He is a deep state. He's a slumlord from New York City that doesn't care.
Well, thank you, David. I appreciate that. Usually you're a smart guy that makes a comment that has something to do with what we're talking about. Here you want to talk about slumlords, and we're talking about this big debate. Tim in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, streaming the show, WEEU area. Go right ahead, brother.
Yeah, well, first off, I just want to say how important I think radio is, and I think it's a great place for discourse in our country. I appreciate what you're all doing, voices for everybody there. But yeah, overall, my reaction to the debate is just, I think it brought the temperature down
I agree with you. I got to jump off right here, Tim. It did bring the temperature down. It was more civil than previous debates for sure. Folks, it's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back. Thank you, Tim, for the call. Don't go anywhere. More to come straight ahead.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Tuesday night. We're live, we're national, and if you want to join our late-night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And, of course, we just wrapped up our coverage of the live vice presidential debate here in New York City between Governor Tim Walz and U.S. Senator J.D. Vance, going back and forth. I got to tell you, it reminded me of yesteryear, right? Very civil, very calm, lots of things discussed. I think J.D. Vance really brought it to them, standing head and shoulders above every one of his three opponents on that debate stage. Of course, Governor Walz and Margaret Brennan and Norah O'Donnell of CBS News, all at times chiming in to mute his microphone, fact check him, allow Tim Walz to lie. Nothing we haven't seen before, but they've definitely done that. And I think Senator Vance remained very, very calm, very cool, very collected. He was able to manage his affect, smiling and really just keeping it very light while delivering very hard-hitting points, calling out que mala eres for everything that she's failed to do in her 3 going on 4 years in Washington as vice president, and now asking for a promotion for a job that she's failing miserably at. I want you to listen to this clip. Check this out.
A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies, and what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%, open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now, not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans.
Again, that's Senator J.D. Vance. And I want to get some reaction to that from our guest. He's a senior advisor on the Trump 2024 campaign, former communications director for Trump's 2020 campaign, founder of Line Drive Public Affairs, and a podcast by the same name, as well as a book called Swing Hard in Case You Hit It, My Escape from Addiction and a Shot at Redemption on the Trump campaign. Tim Murtaugh, welcome back.
Rich, thanks very much for having me again. I love the opening to the show here where the announcer said, interesting guests from around the world. And I'm sure you'll get to one of those after I'm finished here, but I look forward to that.
Well, you're one of those tonight, brother. And I know you're in the thick of it right now. And I want to get your take on, from the political perspective. Do you think that Senator Vance brought it to Governor Walz tonight?
I mean, I wish people could have witnessed what I witnessed here in Trump World Headquarters here in West Palm Beach, Florida, because Senator Vance tonight proved why President Trump picked him as his running mate. I mean, the people were high-fiving here. Just a great performance, a tour de force from Senator Vance. And he did it with a smile. He did it with an understanding. He did it without being hard-edged. He disagreed without being disagreeable. And he absolutely just dominated the night. I saw that Frank Luntz, the pollster and wordsmith Frank Luntz, he had a focus group of 14 people, and they went 12-2 for J.D. Vance over Tim Walz in the debate tonight. And it was just masterful. Every time he had the opportunity, he returned to the economy. He talked about inflation. He talked about how people can't afford to have, and they're having to choose between groceries and gas in the car and paying rent or mortgage. And all of these things that Tim Walz is talking about that Kamala Harris is going to do, why hasn't she done them since she's been the vice president in the Biden-Harris administration for the last 3.5 years? Returning to that point over and over again. She's there. Why hasn't she done these things? And the mess on the border and how that affects so many things in our society, our economy and housing prices. And it just was masterful. And Walz has no answers. It's really hard for him. I felt bad, actually, because I'm sure it's very difficult for him to keep up with what Kamala Harris says she believes today. So it's hard for him to defend her policies because they do keep changing.
Folks, again, we're on with Tim Murtaugh, senior advisor to the Trump 2024 campaign, Trump Vance 2024, and former Trump communications director for the 2020 campaign. And Tim Murtaugh, what's the vibe like? You mentioned you were at the Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida. What was the vibe like in the room?
Oh, it was fantastic. As we were watching, it's just, I was watching, shaking my head thinking, Walz has no idea what he's up against here. In the first 15, 20 minutes, you could tell how nervous he was. And I don't think that he was really, I know that they tried to level set expectations and say, oh, he's nervous. But I guess they might have been for once telling the truth that he was pretty nervous. And I just think that J.D. Vance completely dominated the entire debate, and he showed exactly why America needs to return President Trump to the White House. I think the way that the whole election, really, Rich, boils down to this. People have lived through both administrations. People have experienced the Trump years, and they've experienced what Kamala Harris does when she is in power. And there is no question that people's lives were better when Donald Trump was president than they are now after 3.5 years with Kamala Harris. Heck, when Joe Biden was on The View just last week, just the other day, he talked about how involved Kamala Harris has been in every single thing that they do. He practically called her the co-president. We are seeing the results of Harris's policies already affecting Americans today, and they don't like it. They don't like what Kamala Harris has done. And I'm telling you, we talk about the economy, we talk about immigration, the mess at the border, and we talk about a world on fire. That is what is happening now, a bad economy, a non-existent border, and a world on fire. Iran raining missiles down on Israel just today. People know that all of that happened on Kamala Harris's watch. She can't promise to do anything different. That's who she is. J.D. Vance laid that all out for everyone to see tonight. It was masterful, masterful.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really do. And he did it with a smile and like a real gentleman. Now, Tim Murtaugh, you are a seasoned campaign operative, a political animal, and you know D.C., you know the game. When you hear Joe Biden, and it's not the first time that he said things like that, she's got all the authority. If she speaks for me. It almost sounds to me like he's getting her back for them twisting his arm and throwing him off the ballot by saying, "Oh no, she owns this." What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think there's a little bit of resentment on the part of Joe Biden because, Kamala Harris has spent every day of this abbreviated campaign for her trying to run from her record, hide who she's always been, and certainly hide what she's been doing for the last 3.5 years. She doesn't want any parts of the Biden-Harris record. Heck, if the White House were a storefront on a main street somewhere in America, she'd be out there on the sidewalk with a razor blade trying to scrape her name off the window, but they've been branding it the Biden-Harris administration since the very first day. So when Biden is on The View and in other settings and he's saying, oh, no, she's right there with me every step of the way. She's practically a co-president. She makes all the decisions with me. He's telling her, not so fast. You can't run away from me. You're not going to throw me under the bus. If I'm going down, you're going down with me. I think that's what he's doing. He's like, no, you can't run away from this stuff. You own it just like I do, you know?
And I love it. And I love the fact that he was wearing a MAGA hat a couple of weeks ago and wore it proudly. What was that all about?
That was the dangest thing. I don't know. I have no idea what possessed the man to put on the MAGA hat, but boy, oh boy, was that a picture for the ages. I mean, we really appreciate the free, when the president of the United States, no matter who it is, does something, it gets a lot of eyeballs on it, right? Joe 100%. Biden wearing a MAGA hat, boy, I love the sight of that. That was the best.
Yeah, no, I really, and you know me, I sleep wearing a tinfoil hat, Tim. So when I saw that, I said, "Oh my goodness, he is throwing these subliminal signals here at all of the world, saying I'm with him, I'm with him. Yeah. Screw her." I think he's just mad that they pushed him out.
Before we get too far away from this, I do want to mention again what happened in the Middle East today with Iran raining down dozens and dozens and dozens of missiles onto Israel. And at the very beginning of the debate, it was, I think, basically the first thing they talked about. Tim Walz, incredibly, tried to blame what happened today on Donald Trump. When Donald Trump was president, Iran was weak and broke. By the policies of the Trump administration,
maximum
Iran
pressure.
was weak and broke. Today, they are strong and rich, and they're back to their old game of being the biggest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. And today, they attempted to wipe Israel off the map. And I remind everyone that the reason that Tim Walz was on stage tonight as the vice presidential pick of Kamala Harris and not Josh Shapiro is because the anti-Semitic streak that runs all the way through the Democratic Party would not permit Kamala Harris to have a Jewish running mate. That's the only reason why Tim Walz is the pick and not Josh Shapiro. Mm-hmm. Everyone needs to remember that as we talk about what's happening in the Middle East today. The Democratic Party is full of anti-Semites. And Tim Walz is up there trying to say that Iran trying to destroy Israel and wipe it from the face of the earth is somehow Donald Trump's fault. That's offensive. That's the most offensive thing that happened tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you. Not only is it offensive, but it really was the first question that he answered, and he didn't answer it. And kudos to J.D. Vance for calling him out and saying, "Hey, look, you didn't answer, but I'll answer it on my end." I thought that was terrific. Right. And a final question for you. What was your take on the 3-on-1? It seems like they attempted it. They shut off his mic. They kept fact-checking Vance and letting Walz get away with just about everything.
Yeah, and this is the classic thing. We saw this with Cindy Crowley a number of years ago when she interjected herself into a debate. First of all, they broke the rules. They broke their own rules. They weren't supposed to attempt to fact-check someone live. And the reason why they're not supposed to do this is because it can so easily be abused, and it's exactly what they did. They fact-checked J.D. Vance with fake facts. They fact-checked him erroneously, and he's trying to explain, no. The reason why the Haitian immigrants, the Haitian refugees, the migrants in Ohio, the reason why they're legal is because they were granted legal status by Kamala Harris, and in fact, she bragged about it. And there's an app, a phone app, that doesn't go back to the 1990s. I don't know where Tim Walz is living, where he thinks they had phone apps like
3 years ago.
30 years ago. What's he talking about? That didn't exist 30 years ago. They effectively did wave a magic wand and rendered these people temporarily protected. That's what it's called, temporarily protected status, temporary protected status, TPS. That's what they were given. They were not legal immigrants who came here through the right process. They were magically granted that status after the fact. That's the point he was trying to make, and they shut him down by saying, "Thank you for explaining the legal process." No, that's not what he was explaining. He was explaining while you were factually incorrect. So that's exactly why we don't want fact checks during the course of it, because the leftist moderators will always try to fact check the Republican only, and they get it wrong.
100% right. Tim Murtaugh, senior advisor to the Trump 2024 campaign. He was a comms director in 2020, founder of Line Drive Public Affairs, and he's got a podcast by the same name, and he's author of the book, and I recommend you getting it. And we've talked about the book. It's quite a story. Swing Hard in Case You Hit It, My Escape from Addiction and a Shot at Redemption on the Trump Campaign. Tim Murtaugh, I appreciate it, brother. Keep giving him hell out there.
You bet, Rich. Thank you very much, as always.
Yes, sir. And folks, we come back with more analysis from the the fantastic, the awesome, and I'm not going to say all-knowing because that's probably just a little bit too much, but she knows a ton. Jennifer Kerns, don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret, the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
And of course, that is Tim Walz co-debaters. You've got Margaret Brennan and Norah O'Donnell there doing a 3-on-1 on J.D. Vance, with him handling it like a champ as he won tonight's debate. And I want to get some reaction and analysis on this from somebody who's been a writer and a producer for probably one of the largest presidential debates in modern history. She is the author of The Real War on Women. And you could get a copy of that book at therealwaronwomen.com. She's the host of All American Radio on KABC in Los Angeles, and she is also the former spokesperson for the California Republican Party. Jennifer Kerns, welcome back.
Hey, great to be with you, Rich.
So tell me a little bit about what's going on. I want to get your reaction to this clip that I just played. I played it before. I'm playing it again because the CBS News people were obviously teaming up with Walz to do a 3-on-1 on Vance here, breaking their own rules. And I also want to, get all of your takeaways as well.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it. When I was watching this debate, having been a writer over at Fox News for a debate where, people think that Fox News is so far to the right. But what a lot of people don't know is that Fox actually does go after everyone equally. And in fact, the editorial direction at Fox is most times to actually be a little bit harder on the Republican just for optics' sake. So I just imagine a scenario in which, you have Norah O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan, they're basically playing the same exact role that the ABC News moderators played when they did with Trump. I mean, it was like, have these people not learned anything? And no, they haven't, because they live in this, insider's game of, Midtown Manhattan media outlets. And so that was very disappointing to me, as someone who has worked in media, who's worked for presidential debates. I was just deeply disappointed by that. And, that they seem to not have learned anything from the ABC News debate.
I agree with you. And folks, again, we're on with Jenn Kerns doing some post-debate analysis. We're about 30 seconds away from our break, Jenn Kerns, and then we're going to come back and get the rest of your take on this. But I really want to get your thoughts on how you think J.D. Vance did, as well as how his delivery was. I'm beyond impressed. I thought he handled himself way better than I expected. I thought Tim Walz actually was going to hit him a little bit harder, and Tim Walz, I think, was too busy seeing stars and being nervous himself to really actually be as effective as he might have been. Who knows? Maybe I gave Walz too much credit and maybe not enough to Senator Vance. But Jenn Kerns, stick with me. We're coming right back, folks, with Jennifer Kerns. And check out her book. Get a few copies. Give one to somebody you know. TheRealWarOnWomen.com is the website. TheRealWarOnWomen.com. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez live with you till 1 a.m. Eastern Time. And our phone number, if you want to join our late night national conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. Our guest is Jennifer Kerns. She has been a writer for a presidential debate, one of the largest, in my opinion, where Trump was doing the smackdown on everybody. And she's a former spokesperson for the California Republican Party, the author of The Real War on Women. Check out the website for the book, therealwaronwomen.com. She's a radio host as well, and she's just all over the place, and she's plugged in. Jennifer Kerns, welcome back. Tell me, who won tonight's debate?
You know, I have to say, I think it was a draw, and here's why. I liked J.D. Vance. I thought he made some great points tonight, but I didn't think he went after Tim Walz's jugular in the way that he probably should have. And this is what, it still concerns me about Republicans. Sometimes we're so concerned of how the optics will look, or that we'll look too mean. We can't go after somebody in the way that we really should go after them. On the other side of the coin, Tim Walz actually came off kind of as a normal guy. And we know that he's not rich. We know that he's a guy who would let... Yeah, he's a commie. He's not only that, he's a commie. He's a guy who wants, police officers to be killed. Look no further than the, riots of the summer of 2020. He's a guy who thinks it's okay to have a baby born and then killed in a quote unquote abortion. This is a guy who approves of, tampons in boys' bathrooms, just in case your son happens to get his period. This is not a normal human being. And he was allowed to go on stage tonight and get away with looking like a normal human being. So I think it was a draw for that reason. I think J.D. Vance could have gone after him in the jugular a little bit, but then there would have been all the headlines right the next day. Oh, he's so mean. He's, he's this and that. But So for that reason, I give it a draw.
Okay. Now, let me ask this as a follow-up, because I think that's a fair statement that you made. But my thinking was a little bit nuanced, and in that, and I don't know, right? Maybe you know more than me on this. I don't know what the polling looked like going into the debate on where was the vulnerability and where we needed to draw the most contrast. And I think Vance did a couple of things. I think he made it look like the Trump ticket is not this vicious ticket that the media is making us out to be. Look at how chill I am. Look at how calm I am. I'm a regular person. I think he did a really good job articulating the abortion position 2 or 3 times. I heard him go on to that, where I think that was very effective, being pro-family and let's make money. I think that was really good. And I'm wondering if that was part of the strategy in going against Walz, which was Walz has this appeal of being this Midwestern teacher, coach guy that can wrap himself in normalcy, even though he's a radical communist sympathizer. And if we go after the radical communist sympathizer, will it look like we're bullying this nice old man? And I feel like Vance was effective in being able to chip away at that without beating him up too much. But I don't know if that was a strategy or if that was just him not going as hard as he could have.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they wanted to be very careful not to make Tim Walz a martyr, and that certainly could have happened. Look, I'll share by the numbers. 3 out of 4 Americans tonight said they would actually be watching the VP debate. So it is likely to be, Rich, one of the highest rated vice presidential debates in American history. And I think the ratings will show that in the coming days. There's also some interesting top lines. 2/3 of Democrats say that the choice of the VP pick will have a significant impact on how they vote. And 75%, so slightly more, of Americans say they will be watching and that it will come into play into some of their decisions on who to vote for in November. So I think you're right. I think people, tuning in will sort of see both sides of that. And look, I think tonight, actually, they discussed more actual policy positions than the presidential debate even did on ABC News. And I think J.D. Vance actually did a very good job tonight of covering a lot of the territory, defending Donald Trump's record, maybe in a way that Donald Trump even can't defend it, because it's hard to brag on your own self sometimes. So it's nice when someone else can do it. And I think J.D. Vance did a great job of doing that tonight.
Yeah, the third-party endorsement always effective, in my opinion. Now, Jenn Kerns, I want to get your take on some the breaking news from today, because Trump was on the campaign trail today in Wisconsin, and he made some comments about the news of Israel being attacked by Iran. I want you to listen to this one, cut 9.
The world right now is spiraling out of control. You might not have seen what's happened because it was a few hours ago. A lot of people were here. There's so many people outside, which we appreciate. But a lot of people were here a short time ago. Iran launched 181 ballistic missiles at Israel. And I've been talking about World War III for a long time. And I don't want to make predictions because the predictions always come true. We're not going to make, but they are very close to global catastrophe. We have a non-existent president and a non-existent vice president who should be in charge, but nobody knows what's going on. She was at a fundraiser in San Francisco.
So there's Trump, and I think accurately calling it out, Iran launching 181 missiles at Israel, and Iran, by the Biden administration's admission, days away from having a nuclear weapon after billions of dollars going to the regime, allowing them to skirt sanctions to become this juggernaut of a terrorist supporting superpower, if you will, in the Middle East. And it's obscene, in my opinion. What do you think?
It really is. And this is one of the things that I thought J.D. Vance defended so well and really told the story to the American people of when Donald Trump was president, none of this was happening. And he even went right to the core of the message. And he said, people were terrified to step out of line in the Middle East because Donald Trump did rule with such a heavy hand. And Tim Walz's only response to that was, well, all President Trump does is do mean tweets. Well, that's not true. We're actually taking it to mean terrorists. I mean, that it really, I think, was the big difference of the night between these two. And look, you would have never had an event such as October 7th happening on Donald Trump's watch. And I think most people, and I think certainly most Jewish people watching that tonight would know that. And so that I thought was a bright shining spot for J.D. Vance tonight, just defending the president's record on Israel, on Iran, and really on the foreign policy apparatus in total that happened during the Trump administration.
Jenn Kerns, I did a little experiment, and I brought my 19-year-old daughter into the studio while I was doing the debate prep and watching the debate. And I was like, hey, I want you to see this. And I wanted to see her reactions because, they've grown up in a fairly conservative home, and I'm their dad, but I've never forced any of my opinions on anything. They have their own minds, my kids. But I wanted to see her reaction. And she was watching this stuff, and when they muted J.D. Vance's mic, she looked at me with some bombastic side eye, and she said, "What is going on?" And I said, they muted his mic. And she said, "Why? They're not there for those people. We're here for these guys." And I thought, my daughter, who's 19, sees the obvious problem in that. I think many people are. What do you think the fallout is going to be tomorrow? Do you think this is an indictment on the media?
Oh, absolutely. And look, they didn't just do that, against, journalism ethics. They did it against their own debate rules, Rich. I read the debate rules before the debate started. It was no opening statement. It was the mics absolutely will not be muted. Those were conditions of the debate. And so if J.D. Vance and his team and President Trump and his team wanted to actually sue CBS News for that infraction, they could, because each side, how it works, they each agree, they sign agreements to the rules of the debate. And CBS News in that case really did violate that debate. And look, that just speaks to the fairness and the unfairness today of the media. So it'll be interesting to see how people come away from that. Your daughter is 19 and she noticed it. I'm sure there were millions of Americans who noticed it as well. And it'll be interesting to see if this debate did move the needle on things like that. I was looking back at some of the statistics on how impactful the VP debates really are. And this is pretty interesting. In 2000, it was the only vice presidential debate that moved the needle for a presidential candidate. It was a 1.2 percentage change in favor of George W. Bush when Dick Cheney sparred on stage with Joseph Lieberman. And so it'd be very interesting to see if the J.D. Vance, Tim Walz thing and the unfairness of the media, they are the third shadow character in this whole 2024 election, how that dynamic plays into the poll numbers as we come some 30 days to the elections.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing I'm not a pollster, but I'm going to go ahead and say I think this is definitely going to bode well for the Trump campaign. I think this brought a lot of interested people that might have checked this out thinking they were on the fence. Maybe they're not off the fence, but I think they're more attuned to what's going on with the issues. And I think people walked away with likely some of the same reactions that my daughter walked away with, because she doesn't care about this stuff, right? and looking at her face, I could see there was my own little focus group, and I thought, this is good. And it wasn't good for Walz.
No, it wasn't. Look, I watched it with some people from Ohio on FaceTime. And, they're in a battleground state, and they're from J.D. Vance's home state. So I wanted to watch it with them to get their reaction. And they were very pleased, and they were very proud of their hometown guy, J.D. Vance, tonight. So I think, net, I said it was a draw, I think maybe slightly towards J.D. Vance because of that, the sympathy vote on, having the media stacked against him, as you remind us so well. And, it'll be interesting to see if the polls move, because really these things are great and they draw lots of ratings and lots of eyeballs. But unless it moves the needle between now and Election Day, it really doesn't matter. And that's what I always look for as a former political strategist, is like, doesn't move the needle, doesn't move the poll numbers. This close to an election, it might.
Outstanding analysis. Jennifer Kerns, folks, check out her book, The Real War on Women, therealwaronwomen.com. Jenn Kerns, let everybody know how they find you.
On social media, it's at All American Jen, and they can find me, as you said, at therealwaronwomen.com, or drop me a line anytime, allamericanradio.com.
Outstanding. Jen, I appreciate it. Hope to be in your company and in conversation with you again really soon.
Look forward to it.
You bet. All right, amigos, we're coming right back with an update from the field. We've got some folks that are working with FEMA out there providing aid and relief. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I hear you're reacting, but in terms of being proactive, was the federal government adequately prepared for this?
We were. The extent of devastation is very, very difficult to predict. No one expected Hurricane Helene to actually traverse the amount of land it has indeed covered, but we are responding accordingly. We have been speaking about the need to prepare for extreme weather events for years now.
Well, that is Homeland Security Secretary, impeached Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who was not convicted by the Senate. And he says we've been planning on this, or at least talking about it for years. But again, just like Que mala eres, he's done nothing in his time in office to make anything any better. And even Joe Biden, right? Joe Biden, he says that we've pre-planned an amount of money and all of the aid that we have is already available. Check this out.
We've given them all everything that we have. We're on the ground ahead of time, so we're working hard.
Are there any more resources the federal government could be giving them?
No, we've given them, we have pre-planned a significant amount of it, even though they didn't ask for it yet.
We've pre-planned a significant amount, even though they haven't asked for it yet. I want to get a report on what's going on the ground with the co-founder of Save Our Allies. He's a resident of North Carolina, and he's with us now. Nick Palmisciano, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. Well, tell us a little bit about what is going on. What type of work are you doing on the ground? I know you're kind of working in coordination with FEMA. Tell us more.
Absolutely. Save Our Allies largely operates overseas. It's made up of special operations veterans, infantry veterans, And what we typically try to do is when there's a crisis, we fill the void until such time that the government has completely taken over a situation and we're no longer needed. And so right now, there are a lot of gaps because the devastation is so significant in some areas, particularly around the mountains, the Asheville area. And so we have teams out right now doing search and rescue. We're coordinating for landing zones so that we can get helicopters in and out, get the injured in and out, supplies in and out, and unfortunately, the fallen in and out.
And again, this is a group founded by veterans and supporters, and you guys are on the ground working with FEMA to provide this relief. What's some of what you're encountering? What are you seeing?
The devastation is far greater than what you're seeing, I would say, in most news reports. We have had to, provide supplies like body bags, help coordinate for, body bags and remains to be moved out. And we're talking about casualties that are in the hundreds and by many estimates over 1,000 people that have been killed by this hurricane. So we're really talking about devastation on the level of Katrina.
All right. So now the reports I've heard, death toll was around 130. You're saying it's higher than that?
I can tell you that we delivered body bags for 3 times that today.
Wow. Now, you're you said in the Asheville, North Carolina area. What do you guys have power in the area? What's the scene look like?
So it varies from place to place. There are places that have no power. There are towns that are essentially completely wiped out. And then there are other people that have complete power. It's very piecemeal because what essentially happened is condensation built up on mountains as the hurricane rolled over and created these essentially flash flood rivers coming down the mountains that, if your house was in the wrong place, it's just gone. Whereas your neighbor, that might have been on a different, slope or different part of the hill is completely fine. So it's really very random. And some towns, there are pockets where it's almost life as usual, other than, maybe supplies aren't getting in quite as well. And then there are other places where people don't have, food, water, baby formula, and it's an absolute crisis mode.
Wow. Folks, we continue our conversation with Nick Palmisciano, co-founder of Save Our Allies. He's a resident of North Carolina. He's on the ground with FEMA providing some disaster relief in the wake of Hurricane Helene, and we're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. We continue our conversation, wrapping up with Nick Palmisciano, co-founder of Save Our Allies. He's on the ground in North Carolina, and his organization is helping with the relief efforts. We've just heard some horrific news that there's 3 times the amount of body bags that have been delivered with respect to the current body count that we've heard in the wake of Hurricane Helene. Nick Palmisciano, let everyone know how they can help you. Where do they go if they want to support the cause?
Absolutely. SaveOurAllies.org. You can go there whether you want to volunteer, whether you want to provide donations, or whether you need help. If you're trapped somewhere, you can let us know via the website, and we will get going as soon as possible to do what we can to get you out.
Thank you, brother, for doing everything you're doing and having all these veterans on the ground. Godspeed to you, sir.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
You bet. And folks, we come back with open phones across America. Your calls and more coming up next. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3 of the program. We like to call it Open Phone America, where you guys get to weigh in on everything that's going on in America at night. And of course, big story today, Israel attacked by Iran, 181 missiles launched upon Israel by Iran, and the vice presidential debate right here in New York City between Governor Tim Walz, running mate of Kamala Harris, and J.D. Vance, the running mate, the senator from Ohio, who was the running mate of Donaldus Magnus El Trompito, the 45th president of these United States, Donald J. Trump. And they squared off, and they had a lot to say. And I've played some clips before, and I'll get to some more. We heard a clip of J.D. Vance getting fact-checked by the 3-on-1 team of Nora O'Donnell and what was her name again? Margaret Brennan, along with Tim Walz, that were breaking their own rules on the debate stage. And J.D. Vance, again, standing head and shoulders above all of them in poise, in content and delivery. I think he did a phenomenal job tonight. And even the folks at CNN agree that this is a win for Senator Vance, even if their thinking of how they got there is a little unconventional. Check this out.
I think there was a clear lack of preparation and execution here on Walz's part.
I think actually it's the opposite. I think he had too much preparation.
Maybe, yeah.
He had so many lines that he was clearly trying to say that he didn't listen and said when J.D. Vance said one of the many things he really hit Kamala Harris on, not Tim Walz, but Kamala Harris, he didn't respond because he clearly had things in his mind. I think the lack of interviews that he has done with national media, with local media, it showed. He needed more reps.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, J.D. Vance is much more experienced.
Okay. Was it just me? It could be my bias just coming through the airwaves here. But I heard Anderson Cooper and the rest of these people really not wanting to make these comments, but making them anyway. At least he sounded so begrudging. Oh, he sucked. J.D. Vance wiped the floor with this guy. Absolutely wiped the floor with him. Vance answered the questions, held his own when they cheated on him. Right, when they started doing the fact-checking, turning off his microphone, all that shady stuff. And Tim Walz was out there looking kind of ridiculous, in my opinion, on a couple of them. And on others, he looked all right. He came across as I mentioned with our previous guest in the last hour, he kind of came across as that, Midwestern teacher, dad, regular person. Just mind your damn business, that kind of guy that he tries to come across as, where, he's not so much Tiananmen Tim, but they tried to call him out on that, and he just said, like China. And, I did a little experiment. I was mentioning it before. I asked my daughter to watch the debate with me. She's 19, she's in college, and pre-law, and she was kind of taken aback at a couple of things. And one of the things that she was taken aback by was when he started talking about going to China and having this robust relationship with China, bringing little kids there. And she said, why on earth would he want to bring little kids to China? Doesn't he know that they used to kill people's kids if they had more than one kid, and now you're allowed to have two, but they're still up to no good. And I thought, good for you, kiddo, for knowing stuff. And she said, isn't China like an enemy of our country? And I thought, this is my kid who's pretty apolitical. She doesn't care about this stuff. And even she knows what's going on here. So, and she's old enough to vote. So watch out, Tim Walz. I think J.D. Vance earned her vote tonight, and I think he did that with a lot of people. Anyway, I want to get your thoughts on this, on the debate and everything else that we're talking about tonight. We talked with some relief workers on the ground, former veterans that have coalesced, and they're out there bringing the much-needed aid alongside FEMA and in these hurricane-ravaged areas of the southern part of the United States. And we also had some discussion on the rocket attacks in Iran. And I want to get your perspective on a few different things. And we've got a lot of calls tonight. So here's the phone number if you want to join us. I think there's one or two open lines. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's see. We've got Arizona, Montana, Idaho, Montana again, Maryland, New York, Arkansas, and Maine are lined up thus far. Let's see. Let's go to Allison calling us from Portland, Maine, WLOB. Allison, welcome.
Yeah, I think Mr. Vance really knocked it out of the park. You know, there was this game probably before your time. It was called Rock'em Sock'em Robots. I think he knocked Walz's head. I mean, he knocked his block off. I really do. I wish he'd done, because those darn moderators, oh my God, it's just unbelievable. The way that the immigration thing should have lasted a lot longer. They talk about that. And the fact, the thing I wish he'd been able to talk about more of Mr. Vance, but they didn't let him talk, is about how much unbelievable amount of crime is being committed by the immigrants. He touched on it a bit, but it's just obvious all across the country. And that's, I know Mr. Trump always touched on that, but I wish he'd mentioned Lake and Riley and some of the other people again, who've been horribly killed and abused by these immigrants and everything. But overall, he was just, wow. He's so intelligent. It's just refreshing. And this is just a silly little thing, but I can't stand when people, I know George W. Bush did it too, so okay, but I can't stand when people say nuclear, and Walz did it more than once. And, people have regional pronunciations, they mispronounce things, but I've never understood that one. Nuclear, nuclear. Okay. I never understood that one, no, that's just a little thing, but it just bugs the heck out of me. So
I don't think you're alone. Believe it or not, I think a lot of people get bothered by that, Allison. Thank you so much for the call, and I agree with you. I think Vance, clearly the winner, and even the folks at CNN agree with me on that one. I think it was kind of hard to get away from that. And Jennifer Kerns said she felt it was a draw that kind of leaned more in favor of Vance. I think she was being generous to Walz. Because she wanted to see him beat him up a little bit more. But the reality was when he was beating him up, Walz wasn't even fighting back, right? He would say things about Kamala Harris and her record, and he would not answer the questions. And I think people are paying attention for answers. And when you start getting into these very circuitous responses where it's like, well, just like her, right? When they ask, what are you going to do to make life better for Americans? And Kamala Harris says, well, I grew up in a middle-class home, and my mom saved money for a house. And we were proud of our lawns because people took pride in that. Nobody cares. Really, no, I don't think there's a person that cares that's like, man, well, thank God you were born in such a nice middle-class home. And you know what? I'm just going to keep paying more for eggs, and the bacon price keeps going up. And you know what? By golly, you grew up in a middle-class home. Nobody's saying that. And I don't think they're going to say that. Allison in Portland, Maine, thank you. Shout out to WLOB. And the rest of your calls and more are coming up right now. Give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
There is more news in your commentary, in your analysis, than there is on the news network.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Steady leadership like we see Kamala Harris providing in her role as border czar, steadily leading a flow of illegal migrants into the country, something that I would say rivals the biggest, most vast modern-day slave trade. She says that she's prosecuted transnational criminals. I always say she is a transnational criminal for allowing the biggest human smuggling operation we've ever seen to happen right at the southern border while she facilitates it through the CBP One app. Anyway, let's go to your calls, and there's a lot of you out there. Let's see. Where do we go here? Let's, where do we start here? There's a bunch of people. I want to go to Frank in Evergreen, Montana. Go ahead.
Hi, Rich. You know, I'm pretty sure that there was something wrong with that hearing aid that Walz was wearing, that implanted device. Somehow the balance was from left to right, had a stereo effect that made his head jerk around, up and down, sideways, up, you name it. He kind of looked like Don Rickles up there, you know, just moving around. I just couldn't believe it, you know. But no, he's a terrible stand-up comic. I mean, Don Rickles is a genius, but geez, this guy was terrible.
I agree.
I mean, it's sick watching this guy.
Frank, this the comment you made is very funny because a couple of weeks ago we had Cheryl Atkinson on the show, and she tweeted during the debate a picture of Don Rickles on one side and a picture of Tim Walz on the other, and I swear it was almost indistinguishable. So I think you're spot on. Don Rickles for VP, Kamala Rickles 2024. That's the ticket right there. Frank in Evergreen, Montana. Thank you, sir. Shout out to KOFI. I want to continue. Let's go to, let's see, where were we here? Let's go to Luciferno calling us from Mound City. Is that Mississippi?
No,
KMA?
it's Missouri.
Ah, Missouri. Okay, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. Yeah, I thought Vance was right on. He didn't need to go for the jugular veins like that other gal mentioned. He was smooth. He carried it. He carried it strong. My idea is South America is ours now. All their people have pretty much moved up here. And so, you know, what happens when a big fishy swallows a lot of little fishies? It becomes the big fish in the tank. And so they've all moved up here. I mean, whether they were invited or non-invited, either way you look at it, most of them are up here. So what does that make South America? Ours. North America, South America, just annexed. Forget the border. Who needs to even screw with it any longer? Let's just get it together, clean out South America, use it for our productivity.
Yeah, I think you might be onto something there, Lucy. I really do. And you know, it's sad that we've seen this happen, but that's the steady leadership Tim Walz is talking about, right? That she's him, Joe Biden, Alejandro Mayorkas, Kamala Harris, the steady leadership of constantly allowing this country to be invaded by everybody and their mother who can make it to the southern border. And this is, you know, we've seen it time and again with former ICE officials, former Border Patrol officials, current Border Patrol officials that have been guests on this program telling us that this is not just people seeking a better life from the northern triangle of Central and South America there. This is people from 150 different countries across the world that are making their way to the southern border. I have a Cuban friend that constantly tells me, he's like, look, he's like, nobody's trying to do what he came to the United States on the back of a jet ski, left Havana, Cuba on the back of a jet ski, made it to Key West, Florida, and that's during the Wet Foot, Dry Foot program, and made it into the United States years ago, a couple of decades ago. But today he says it's so much easier for the Cubans to just pay one of the cartel people to get them across the Rio Grande River. Then they come in and they can get all the perks and benefits that are coming through the border. Signing up for an app, getting an airline. Once you get in here, they'll fly you into the interior of the country, wherever you need to be, right? And it's not wherever they need to be. It's wherever they need them to be. And that's what it is. They move them to the cities that they think are their best to strengthen New York City. They send them to New York City to strengthen what other Democrat stronghold they want to strengthen. They send them there. Really, it's a real shame to see what's going on. But, Lucy, I think you're right. And big shout-out to you guys in Missouri listening on KMA. Thank you for the call, Lucy. And let us continue. Where do we go? I want to go to Pat. Pat's in Sedona, Arizona, streaming the show, richvaldez.com. Pat, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, thank you. Hey, it's neat to hear about the kid comes to work with dad day that you had today.
Oh.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so believe it or not, just to chime in on that, I asked her to come see it because I wanted to do my experiment, but she turned to me and said, I doubt she would have done it if she didn't have to. She said, oh my gosh, thank you for the reminder. For my political science class, I actually had to watch the debate and take notes and fact check some of what they were saying. So it turned out I was a homework reminder, but go ahead, Pat. Thank you.
Yeah, I just think it's so great that you bring your family into it, conservatively, but it's fantastic to have that. Okay, talking about facts and truths, when Walz was talking about the airplane being shot down by the Iranians, that was a drone. That was a drone that was shot down. And then when they were talking about the missiles that the military men and just gave them headaches, we was trying to explain to people what it was like to have, a head shock. Like a lot of guys in the
traumatic brain injury.
Traumatic brain injury. He was trying to explain it, so he didn't exactly tell the truth about what Trump. He just wanted to make Trump sound like an idiot, but he sounded like an idiot, and it really was 3 against 1, and Vance held his ground. I tell you what, a lot of people learned who this man is. And this man, because, we're looking at a president that's going to only serve 1 term. So Vance is a very important pick. And I think we've got a very important pick here because he's going to have to take over within 4 years after Trump and carry the ball if he decides to do that, because it's going to take a long time. It's going to take more than 4 years. We are in deep trouble in this country, economically, safety-wise, criminal-wise. There's a lot of stuff that Joe Biden's let the cows out of the barn and out of the farm. We are definitely in trouble. And I'll tell you what, I saw a picture today on the internet. It was Donald Trump in knee-deep water with a life jacket on. He's in the flood area where this came in. He was in Mexico talking about the people that were killed by these criminals that got over the claims. He was in Washington and Arlington for the not a celebration, but they were recognizing the 13 that were killed. So,
from Abbey Gate. Right. Pat, I got to pause right here. Thanks, brother. Always great. And thank you for your service. I know you're a veteran. I always appreciate that. Pat in Sedona, Arizona, streaming the show, richvaldez.com. Folks, we come back with the rest of your calls and more. We got calls from New York, Arkansas, Ohio, I guess Missouri, hoping not Mississippi, and Idaho. Rich Valdez coming right back.
Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5500. 5337 833 4Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
So today, Iran launched approximately 200 ballistic missiles at Israel in a reckless and brazen attack. I condemn this attack unequivocally. I'm clear-eyed. Iran is a destabilizing, dangerous force in the Middle East, and today's attack on Israel only further demonstrates that fact.
That is Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States, candidate for president, by the way, saying that Iran is an enemy of Israel's and it's destabilizing. El Trompito, her rival, also spoke about this today. He was at a rally. Let me see, where was this rally again? Was it in Wisconsin? Trump. Yep, Trump in Wisconsin today. Listen to this.
But when I was president, Iran was in total check. The Iranians were starved for cash. Nobody was buying their oil. And they were ready to make a deal. They wanted to make a deal. They wanted to do something. And a terrible thing. You know, we got more votes in the second election. As you know, we're 2016, 2020. We got millions and millions more votes the second time. And they missed by just a little sliver, right? Somebody said like 19,000 votes. It's just a disgrace. They're not going to be able to do that a second time. They're not going to be able to do that a second time. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris made Iran rich in a very short period of 3.5 years. They have $300 billion now. They're rich.
So that is, again, El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, speaking in Wisconsin, talking about Iran and how rich they are because of his maximum pressure campaign, which Walz said Trump did nothing and he made it worse and he bailed out of the JCPOA, which clearly wasn't doing anything except handing money over, including pallets of cash. He must have forgot that part. Anyway, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ, and check in with Paul. Go right ahead, brother.
Hey, good evening, Rich. Yeah, with the debate there, you know, it was refreshing. It really was. They actually did debate a little bit, you know. It wasn't an argument. But I think Vance did a better job of addressing the issues on that front. But my main concern is, Rich, and I'd like to ask you this question. You know, the what they call proxies, the proxy war, okay? That's what these terrorist organizations are to Iran, right? Now that Iran has attacked Israel, isn't it the duty of the United States to take more action? I mean, where are the Iranians getting these missiles? I last heard that they were supplying weapons to Russia, and I just want to know where they're getting their missiles and so forth, you know. And I think it's China is who I think it is. But I find this is a very dangerous situation, you know. And by the way, J.D. Vance is from Ohio, not too far from me, where he lived. And he's pretty good. I did not know a whole lot about him. I told you that quite a while back. I don't know, a month or so ago.
Right.
Yeah. And I just want to know what the United States is going to do. I heard nothing from Walz, but, you know, the same thing about at the end of his speech, he said, we want joy. You know, we want America to be great. Tell me what you're going to do to make America great. You know, when we have now Iran attacking our ally, and I thought that was a violation of, I don't know if it was the Geneva Convention or what. And I'd like you to answer that question. Where do you think they're getting these missiles and things to do these kind of things?
Sure. Well, I think Iran, right, their main angle here is, I think they have they've been building an arsenal. They've been developing yellow cake uranium, enriching it to the point where it's almost ready to be a nuclear weapon. So Iran has the IRGC, the Islamic Republic of Iran has the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as their main entity for military, but they also have all these proxy groups like Hezbollah and all the others. So I think it's no secret that Iran is in cahoots with China, at least in discussions with China and with Russia, because the Machiavellian principle of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And we're seeing that play out in real time. Not only are they all involved in destabilizing the world and trying to everybody go at the great Satan, as we're known as, right? And this was something I was telling my kid about earlier. I said, when they open up parliamentary sessions in Iran, they shout death to America. It's a chant that they have. That's not something we do here to them, right? But that's something that they do to us. So it's clearly very antagonistic towards the West, in particular the United States and Israel. And it's unfortunate, but that's exactly what they do. And the fact that they've had all this money and they've made money on fuel sales and everything else that they've been allowed to do to skirt the sanctions that Trump had through the maximum pressure campaign have allowed them to be where they are now, to amass the arsenal that they have and to be able to take this position against us. And here we are. And I think the question for all of us, Paul, is what do we do? Do we elect Kamala Harris, and allow her to continue these policies that are going to embolden and enable our enemies? Or do we go in a real new direction? Despite her saying we're going in a new direction, it's clearly fake, phony, fraud rhetoric. And I think that's where we have to go, Paul.
Yes, sir. And, I just think we're in a dangerous situation. And I'd like to also say one more thing about this strike on the coast here, with the dock workers. Those guys want from $39 to $69 an hour. Come on, man. You guys better talk to your union bosses. Biden, get involved. Harris, get involved, because this is going to affect America. I don't want to have to look for toilet paper again,
I doubt we're going to have to look for toilet paper, but I do think that if you own a car that's not brand new and you need a part for it, like I might have to fix my daughter, she has a Lexus, I'm going to have to get some parts for one of the wheels that's making some noise. It might be difficult, because a lot of parts are going to be held up, and I don't know how long this is going to go on for, but it doesn't seem like they're willing to budge on the automation part of it. And I know the automation part is a big deal. And, AI, machine learning, all that stuff, automating certain systems, it might replace men, right? Actual manpower. And I think that's a problem, right? People don't want to lose their jobs to machines. And that's a big part of this. And this was the same gist of the writers' strike, where it was that AI portion of their new contract for the Screen Actors Guild that they said, we don't like that either. So it's an ongoing problem that we're facing, and I don't know what side of it we're going to come out on, but we shall see. And will Harris or Biden step up to intervene? I don't know, Paul. Your guess is as good as mine. Thanks, brother. Shout out to WHIZ. Folks, we're going to pause right here, coming back to your calls and more. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
That, of course, Senator J.D. Vance at the debate tonight between him and Governor Tim Walz, the final debate of our election cycle with, I think, 36 days to go till Election Day, if I'm not mistaken. And exciting times. I want to get to your calls. Let's go to Joe. Joe is in Salem, Arkansas. KSAR, go right ahead.
Yeah, Rich, according to Timmy, happy days are here again for the Democrats, you know. And, you know, he said something that he called himself a knucklehead. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Actually, I think I referred to Camilla as that, but really what she is, if he's a knucklehead, she's a dope. The biggest lie, though, was Trump hasn't paid any taxes in 20 years. Now, you know, there's so many hidden taxes. There's no telling how much he has paid. And if I remember right, he started out giving his $400,000 salary back, and I assume he done it for 4 years. Now, if he did that, you might know that'd be $1.6 million. I'd call that taxes back into the Treasury, right?
Yeah, definitely one way of looking at it. But the reality is, Trump owns several companies, and they try to make it look like he's not paying tax on whatever. And meanwhile, his taxes have been released. Right, so it's clear that he has paid taxes, but there's also hundreds of millions that get paid on the income that's generated by these multiple businesses. So it's unfair, honestly, to make a claim like that. But this is what they like to do, to use their fair share argument, which, in my opinion, is it's a fake, phony, fraud argument. There's no fair share. It's people. Everybody should truly be paying their fair share, and it shouldn't be the way it is, right? I think Trump's onto something with saying that we shouldn't be paying tax on tips and tax on Social Security. And honestly, he should take it across the board and say we shouldn't be paying tax on income. I'd love to hear that, and I'd love to see that happen. I don't know. Anyway, Joe in Salem, Arkansas, thank you for your call, my brother. I appreciate you. And let's see, where do we go from here? Let us continue. I want to go to Paul, Boise, Idaho, KBFI. Go right ahead.
Thanks for taking my call, Mr. Valdez.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's something that's been bothering me about China. It's the elites that they keep referring to in the Democratic Party are born out of the money that's been made in China, and it just keeps piling up for a few. And you wonder what's happened with us. And now we're going to have the supply chain problem. With a strike, but back to tonight, I was pleased with Vance's delivery. He reminded me a lot of a college professor doing a dissertation, schooling Tim, and I thought Tim was addle-brained. I think he had too many trips on magical mushrooms back in the 70s, and it showed. And,
yeah, I think you might be right. Well, honestly, I can't say I think he did his best. He just was outmatched, right? He really was outmatched. He's very good at being on the attack. He's very good at his famous line, "Mind your damn business." He's great at that. If you think that's effective, in reality, Paul, I don't think it is. I don't think the mind your damn business thing is very effective. I think it has an effect on people who, when you preach to the choir, in my opinion, in this business, you don't really win. The key is not to deliver a stump speech, a red meat speech to your base. That works, but it doesn't get you anywhere, right? It doesn't, like Jenn Kerns was talking about earlier, it doesn't move the needle. These people need to win people. They need to win hearts and minds. And I don't think Walz is doing that. If he's, with his mind your damn business, I just don't think it's working to win people over. Like, yeah, you know what? You're right. Maybe I'm wrong. It could be my own bias that's in the way. But I don't think anyone says, you know what? I didn't know Tim Walz before, and I wasn't really on this side of the abortion issue. But now, after hearing him speak, I think I'm a pro-choice person. I think I support what he's supporting because of his effective speech. He was very persuasive. I just don't think that's happening. I really don't. I don't think he's got that effect. I don't think he has that power. But anyway, I'm going to take a pause right here. We're going to come back for the speed round. We got calls from Missouri, Illinois, Delaware, and more. 833-482-5337. Paul in Boise, thank you for your call. KBFI in the building. I'm Rich Valdez, coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
All right, amigos, welcome back, America. I am Rich Valdez. I'm with you. It's the speed round. Let us go to Danny, Rolla, Missouri, KTTR. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, thanks for taking my call. Less than 30 seconds. Comic relief, but it's food for thought. We should have our fish and wildlife, our conservation departments running the immigration and the border, since they already deal with invasive species. That's number one. Number two, Iran is producing 4 times the oil that they were under Trump. Simple fact. Number three, Jimmy Hoffa, although he had problems with other things, organized crime, what have you, they shut him down because no one person or organization should have that much control over the American economy. So I wonder how that ties in with the longshoremen. Anyway, thanks for taking my call. Have a great evening.
Wow, Danny, thank you. Good call, man. And I agree with you on the fish and wildlife officials at the border. We already got these guys there. Let's deputize them. Not a bad idea at all. And I'm pretty sure in a Trump administration, something like that will likely happen. All law enforcement will be on deck. Let's very quickly go to Linda, calling us from WDEL in Wilmington, Delaware. Linda, what's going on?
Hi, just quickly, I have 2 points. Number one, I think Americans have really short-term memories. And one of the things with Kamala flip-flopping back and forth that I don't hear people reminding us about was the fact that when Trump was getting that vaccine through Warp Speed program, both Biden and Harris both said they would never take the vaccine because they didn't trust Trump and the way it was produced. But the minute they got in office, what were they doing? They were mandating and requiring that people take the vaccine. In fact, going so far as to tell companies to fire people if they wouldn't take the vaccine. So I think we have people that don't remember much in the past. And my second quick point is Dinesh D'Souza has a new movie that's out this week, and it may go for another week, called Vindicating Trump.
Oh, yeah, I've seen some advertisements.
Yeah, and I would suggest that everybody go and take that person that's on the fence.
Not a bad idea at all, Linda. Thank you for your call. A big shout out to WDEL, and maybe we'll invite Dinesh to come on and talk about the new film. And let's go to Chicago, Illinois, WLS. John, go right ahead.
Hi, how are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
Good. Well, just a few things. I mean, I've heard a few things.
We got about 30 seconds, so pick one.
All right. So I'm going to pick immigration. Here's my thought. I'm thinking that I think that U.S. and Mexico just need to unite and become one continent, literally. The
good news is the U.S. and Mexico and Canada are one continent. It's known as North America, and that's exactly what we are. And Trump solidified a trade deal called the USMCA. It was actually a really good trade deal that kind of outdid NAFTA during his days in office. But, John, thanks for the call, brother. I appreciate it. Chicago, Illinois, in the building, WLS. And, folks, that's it for me, Rich Valdez. That ends our coverage of the debate. We're back tomorrow with more hard-hitting interviews and everything else that we do here. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.